Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Welcome, everybody, to the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 312. We are into February, the week of Shipshewana show. I got Don Higgins, and folks, we've said this multiple times. Don Higgins is available for free marriage counseling. Right before we recorded, he had to walk outside his office and tell his wife to tone it down a little bit. We were getting too much background noise. So we'll see if you're sleeping on the couch tonight, buddy.
Yeah, and we're recording this on Valentine's Day, so I'm not sure if I'm being much of a sweetheart today or not, but I'll find out as soon as this recording's over and I walk out of here.
We were in Bible study the other day talking about the story of Jesus at the wedding where he turned water into wine, and when Jesus' mom came up to him and told him to do something, he replied and said, "Woman, it's not my time yet." So did you walk outside and say, "Woman, be quiet"? Or were you a little bit better than that?
I didn't push my luck that far. We probably wouldn't be recording right now.
You might have gotten the throne phone at you, but no, thanks for everybody for tuning into this episode. We got some interesting stuff as we prepare for the big Shipshewana show. I think it's just going to be a phenomenal event, but what's so cool about this year is, Don, we've talked about it over the years. The Shipshewana show has actually been the exact same week as the National Farm Machinery Show and the NWTF and Harrisburg. So it fell this year on the calendar where Shipshewana, the Midwest Sportsman's Classic with FAE, fell a week later. So we're really hoping that a lot of people who've wanted to come to this show but were going to the other shows are able to come up. And we even got some really cool pictures from NWTF that our Chasing Giants blind wrapped in Osseo Camo by 360 was actually one of the main event prizes to give away.
Yeah, I got a report from that show yesterday, and a good friend of mine sent me a picture of our blind as the grand prize for some drawing. I don't know if it's the NWTF is holding the drawing or who is, but our blind is the grand prize. And also, he had stopped and talked to Mark Drury, and Mark told this person to tell me hello and that he's ready to come on the podcast. In fact, he's really looking forward to it and asked this guy to have me reach out to him. So we'll have to get Mark on here pretty quick.
Yeah, we've been talking about having Mark on for several topics, and we need to get it done before turkey season because that guy chases turkey all over the world. So we need to get that scheduled along with the Republican candidate for governor in Illinois. He wants to come on the podcast, talk about his view from a political side for the Illinois deer herd. We were going to try to do this, but my schedule is unbelievable the month of February, and I just couldn't find a date that worked for everybody due to me being in a hotel and not being able to record this thing. So that's on me. We'll try to get that done as soon as possible. You've been hitting the consulting trail a whole lot harder than I have because of my work schedule and travel. I'm only able to do a couple of them. I've cut way back this year, but we both saw properties this week that just had some really unique things to it. I'm going to let you talk first about a very unique situation that doesn't happen very often where neighbors are actually working with us.
Yeah, so I looked at two properties in western Kentucky this week, as well as some in Illinois, but both of those Kentucky properties, I think, have a world of potential to produce some really good deer. The one, what was so interesting about it is I got there and I pulled it up on Onyx, and the property right next door was on my Onyx was outlined in red, and I couldn't remember why was that outlined in red. And because I knew I hadn't consulted on it. Well, as it turned out, you had consulted on it because we don't typically do bordering properties. If a client, hires us, if we know it, we don't do any property that touches that client. Well, the property had sold since you had been there, and the folks that I was working with were working hand in hand with the neighbor on that other property that you had consulted on. And they were sharing pictures and video back and forth. And from what I seen, both parties are definitely on the same page. I mean, they were both letting some really, really good deer walk. And the potential there is just sky high. I don't remember how big the property that you consulted on was, but the one I was on was 400 acres, and it was literally some of the best habitat that I've ever seen. Because I talk about growed up cattle pastures, and this 400 acres probably had over 200 acres of it was growed up cattle pasture. And I mean, it was just at that stage of regrowth where there's enough cover there now for the deer, but for about the next 20 years, it's going to just get better and better and better. And in fact, the timber that was on the property really could use a timber harvest and a TSI cut, or timber stand improvement cut. And I told the client not to touch that timber for at least 10 years, if not 15 years, because he's got that pasture ground that's just getting better each year. Wait and hold off on that timber until that pasture is becoming mature and is losing some of its attraction. Then go in and cut the timber. And we'll also look at that pasture ground at the same time. But I made a little video. Anybody that follows me on social media, I may recall the video that I posted last week of that growed up cattle pasture, and 400 acres of that right next to the property that you was on, because I could see that property had been timbered hard. And that was another reason I told him not to cut the timber on this property, because the neighboring property had been cut really, really hard. So we want to set ourselves apart and be different than the neighbors. And I just told them to hold off for a minimum of 10 years. And these guys are absolutely going to kill some giants.
Yeah, it's a ton of acres that if both people are on the same plan, even though both farms are kind of working individually, if both sides are using the discipline that our plan puts in place about where to hunt with different winds to not put pressure on that big a core of sanctuaries, where the property I worked on had a set sanctuary in the core that was going to be let growed up, a ton of timbering. These, by the way, whoever logged that was logged before I got there. It was one of the best logging jobs as far as taking care of the ground and, being respectful to the property, leaving good future trees in certain areas where they didn't want them. Top notch to whoever that was. I have no idea. I've been asked a couple times when I referenced it on the podcast, but whoever did that did a fantastic job. But then you have your cattle pasture kind of in the lower land. I mean, if they just stay out and hunt the right stands on the right conditions, that place is going to be great. If they start long-term managing the herd, like we talk about on this podcast, especially the last few weeks, it's hard to tell what they'll be shooting in just a few short years. I mean, it is the bucks that are already there, the bucks that are passing, phenomenal area. So I'm really excited for those guys, and phenomenal piece of property. I want to talk real quick about it. We have a just very unique segment that we're going to be presenting at the Midwest Sportsman's Classic, partnered with FAE, where you and I used FAE equipment on our home farms, and we're going to have this behind the scenes video tour of what we did as this habitat project. But as you're working with those guys with that grown up cattle pasture, to maintain that, I'm sure that your plan has some structure on where they leave it and amplify it, where they can hunt the edges, pull deer out through funnels. Talk a little bit about maybe some coaching you did to basically keep that balance of grown-up cattle pasture, but not turning into just an invasive thicket, because some FAE technology might be exactly what we need to just keep that under control and maintenance for a longer period of time.
Yeah, so when I posted that video, there was, how the critics come out of the woodwork and make their comments. And one guy posted, you need to burn that pasture on a regular basis. And that's the last thing it needs, because when you burn it, what you're doing is you're killing a lot of that regeneration, the weeds and such. And most pastures are cool season grasses. And when you burn, you're destroying the competition for those cool season grasses. So over time, those briars and saplings and whatever, they start to dominate and choke out those cool season grasses. Well, the fire just comes and resets everything, and boom, you got a field of cool season grasses again. So I would much rather see someone go in with like the FAE, and when you get these pockets that are really thick, that are almost impenetrable, you just mow them down with the FAE and start that process over again. Let those briars and saplings start growing new shoots from the roots that are left. and just reset the whole program. But I'm telling you, from one end of that farm to the other, and the good thing about it is there's road access on both ends, so they can come in from two directions. There's great spots for some food plots. They're going to have plenty of food on this farm. I mean, there's going to be food left over every year. And right down the road, not too far, is I think it's 3,000 or 5,000, just a huge chunk of public ground that's on the Ohio River. And so, and they, according to these guys, it doesn't get much pressure. So there's just a lot going on in this neighborhood that these guys are definitely going to kill some giants. The other property I was on in Kentucky also has a world of potential. It's one of the, not the biggest, but one of the bigger properties I've ever consulted on. Is 1,400 acres.
Wow.
And it's got a 100-acre lake on it. And I spent a lot of time there. Some of you guys that follow me on social media might remember the little video I posted of my new buddy Eli, the 8-year-old young man that was with us on that day. And he's quite a character, I'll tell you. Kind of made my day, spending the day with that kid. But that property's got a world of potential too. Today, these guys just got the property. Really, they haven't had it long at all, and it doesn't have near enough food on it. Well, we put 200 acres of food on this 1,400-acre property, and it's in an area where there's not much agriculture. It's very heavily wooded, and for us to put 200 acres of food on this 1,400-acre property is going to be an absolute game changer. Seeing some pictures from that farm as well, it's another one that's just got a world of potential, not just this farm, but that whole area. And I almost think Western Kentucky might be a sleeper area. And another thing I really like about Western Kentucky versus Southern Illinois is that in Western Kentucky, you can supplemental feed. And so these farms are both going to have supplemental feed on them all year round. And the deer are not going to be starving on these two properties. I promise you that. I can't wait to see what both these clients send to me in the future as far as bucks they harvest.
Yeah, I mean, there's some drawbacks to it. We can supplemental feed, but not during the time of the year we want to. You know, they've cut off feeding from March through July, but you can run feed the rest of the time. So it's more a baiting strategy than it is really herd health. I wish they would flop it and let us feed here in Kentucky through the spring and early summer and then shut it off before deer season. But it's better than Illinois where you can't do anything, and you can put mineral out year round. So as long as it's not a feed block, if it's straight mineral, at least we're trying to do the things. But there's another thing here that, people will laugh at me being a Kentucky resident and a Illinois non-resident hunter every year that's got it going for it. Both states are crossbow friendly. Kentucky actually, I think, has a shorter crossbow season than Illinois, believe it or not. But the kicker in this, Don, is I think there's one major factor. Kentucky's a $1 state. Illinois is a 2. So just on each side of the river, you got the supplemental feeding, the mineral side, but you also got everybody that comes to that area to try to hunt. They're only able to shoot one buck, no matter with what weapon. And I think that over time, you're going to see Illinois continue to decline and Kentucky either plateau where it's at or maybe even get a little bit better, especially on pockets like what you consulted on, where there's so many acres of people on the same page. They can really get that age structure, because I don't know the percentage of people that kill 1 buck versus 2, but if people only have one tag when they're coming in there, you got to think that that's got to eventually play a statistical role in the age structure of 3-year-olds getting shot.
Well, there's no doubt that the 1 buck limit definitely has a positive impact on the quality of a deer herd. And I know the state of Illinois in the past, when groups have argued for the 1 buck limit, the DNR has thrown out data, and I don't recall what the figures are, but very few hunters shoot 2 bucks. Well, they're kind of missing the point, because how many hunters shoot 1 buck? Everybody shoots the first buck that comes along, and then they hold out for a trophy buck with their second tag. Right. Well, when there is no second tag, they save a lot of those first bucks. And that's the point that the Illinois DNR has missed in the past. And I think that there's some folks out there, and I've seen their videos and such, that have misunderstood my stance on 1 buck limit. I fully support a 1 buck limit, but I think that a $1 limit without a non-resident limit is you're kind of missing the boat, because the better you make your state, if you're not limiting non-residents, you're just going to encourage more and more of them to show up. So everything you gain with that $1 limit, you're going to lose with more non-residents coming in. So I think if you could enact the two together, that would be the ideal situation. And, you mentioned before, we got Republican candidate for governor Darren Bailey coming on the podcast here in the next few weeks. It's just a matter of getting our schedules together. I have a little bit of hope with him, not a lot, because I know how dirty Illinois politics are, but he's a country boy with good moral values, and I think he gets it. I don't think that he is as educated on the hunting side as he is the farming side of things, but I think he's open-minded enough and level-headed enough to look at things from a different perspective and consider different points of view. And my hope is that first that he gets elected, and then that he is open-minded. I hope that if he gets elected, that he appoints the right person as a DNR director. And we could take this in another direction too, because I went on a little rant here not too long ago. I think it might have even been last week's podcast about the National Deer Association. And we had some interesting things happen there, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But you're right. The $1 limit is very critical for any state if they want to grow giants.
Well, I think that I might be in trouble for saying this, but whenever we could get a conservative person with a good moral compass as governor of the state of Kentucky or state of Illinois versus what you have right now, instead of the flat out crooks, it's a step in the right direction from a moral compass. Let's just leave it at that. So I hope that in states like Illinois across our United States, that the silent minority continues to speak up and go vote, because when we allow these just liberal, entitled people, you see what it's done to the state of Illinois in more ways than just deer hunting. So it's time for us conservative people. If you're a liberal and you're still listening to this content after 312 episodes, I'll be shocked. So I'm assuming the tens of thousands of people that listen to our show pretty much align with the content that we kind of talk about, poke the bear at, and joke about a lot. But it's time for us to speak up and go vote. So
I got let's take a quick break.
Go ahead. Yeah.
From my Kentucky visit, before we go to the break, one of those properties that I was on was not too far from Crofton, Kentucky, and we went for lunch in downtown Crofton to this Amish Mennonite restaurant. And I'll tell you what, when I walked in the door, it was like every head turned and jaws dropped, and I was shaking hands with people. And I just want to shout out, and they were all listeners of Chasing Giants. That's how they knew me. And they said, this one guy said, he says, man, you walked in the door and I thought that was you, but when you started talking and I heard your voice, I knew it was you. So anyway, I want to shout out to all those good folks at Crofton that I seen there at the restaurant this week. Appreciate your support.
It's a little embarrassing when we get recognized in public, I won't lie. We've both been out in public and that happens. We really appreciate it. It's not that we don't want people to say hello and introduce themselves, but there's never been anything more humiliating in my life than having to sit in an autograph line, to be honest with you, because it's like, why am I autographing anything? But yeah, I mean, everywhere we go, we just meet super great people. It's odd that we're in a position after 312 episodes and producing the content that we do that's out there, that people know us as well as they do. And you have strangers come up that know pretty much everything we talk about. It's different, and it's very... I get embarrassed a lot, and there's not much that embarrasses me. It's my family laughs at me when people recognize me while we're out or whatever. So it's part of it, I guess.
Something interesting, another interesting thing that's happened to you and I both recently is a company reached out to us about possibly working with us on a project, and we won't go into the details of that. But one of the things that they said was that they had been watching us for a year and a half before approaching us. And what I found amazing was that they watched us for a year and a half and they still wanted to work with us. I have a former business partner who thought that me standing on politics was about the worst thing that could happen to the business. But I think there's a lot of good people that are like-minded that are sick of seeing the direction this country has gone, and they support, patriotic American companies. So I just want to thank everyone that's still with us. And you can have a different opinion. That's fine. We know this is America where you're entitled to your opinion if it's different than ours, and we totally respect that, but we're not going to keep ours quiet.
I disagree with you. I'm gonna start a debate right now before the Osseo break.
Let's go.
I don't think it's a matter of where you've stood politically. I think it's about how bold you've been with your faith. That's the difference. Your political stance has not changed over that period of time. But as we've both grown and we've both committed to using this platform to admit that we both fail, that we're both sinners, that we both struggle with stuff just like everybody else, but we're putting God first in everything we do, He's glorified and made this a blessing. And we've been constant about our political affiliation and our beliefs. That's never changed. But we have committed to use this, and I know there's people that turns you kind of off, and that's okay. But I think that's the major difference is we've been blessed because of us putting the priority of this towards our faith and putting the spotlight towards Jesus and not us. And that's where your former business partner just could not get it wrapped around his head. He wanted the spotlight on him and him only, and was jealous when the spotlight wasn't on him. And we've tried to separate you and I away from that and say, let's put the focus on Jesus. And look what's happened. Very blessed. So we'll be right back with a spot from Osseo, and let's talk about this National Deer Association topic that's kind of blown up since last week. We'll be right back.
Osseo Gear has perfected one of the most innovative camo patterns on the market. The unique camo pattern designed to mimic the feather patterns of one of North America's greatest predators, the great horned owl. Combined with intuitive features, superior comfort, and ultra high quality fabrics, give bow hunters the ultimate advantage. Osseo has outfitted over 10,000 bow hunters across the country with over 1,000 5-star reviews. Visit asiogear.com to check it out for yourself. Use code CHASINGGIANTS for 15% off.
Well, as always, thanks to Osseo. If you're not following them on social media, folks, I sent a message back and forth to Joe Miles yesterday. He was at the Harrisburg show. He said it was a crazy good event for Osseo as far as getting orders, meeting new customers. His brand is continuing to grow in the outdoor space. We're just so happy for him. He puts in such a lot of hard work. And I saw on social media that they're coming out with a turkey vest. I don't know anything about it, but all I can say is, Joe Miles, if Al Foster is not the first one wearing this Osseo turkey vest, I'm going to be really disappointed. So all of the team from Osseo, make sure you take care of the turkey doctor, Al Foster, with one of the first turkey vests that are out there. But thanks to Osseo, we'll be seeing Joe. He's one of the judges for the bake contest next week in Shipshewana, so let's get him all fattened up and on a sugar high all week. As we start this next segment, let's do a real quick overview of our upcoming appearances. We got some starting just in a couple days.
Yeah, February 17th, which is this Tuesday. Is it Tuesday? Yeah, this Tuesday.
Yes.
We're going to be in Vermontville, Michigan. Just put together a new PowerPoint yesterday on the biggest mistakes that I see land managers make. And so it's a brand new presentation, never been done before. February 17th, dinner starts at 4:30 and seminars start at 6. If you're interested in that event, the phone number is 517-726-1600. And then, next Thursday, Friday, and Saturday is the Midwest Sportsman's Classic by FAE in Shipshewana, Indiana. Terry and I will both be there. Lots going on. We will be on the stage every single day of that event doing a live Chasing Giants podcast. We got a land management presentation that's never been shown anywhere before, including some video clips from Terry's farm and my farm.
Don't forget the Doubting Thomas video. We're very close, just making a few little tweaks to some trail camera pictures and B-roll footage, but We've seen pretty much what this debut video is going to be, and I think for those people who are going to be there Friday, you're going to see an unbelievable story with more footage of giant bucks than any other hunting video that I think has ever been produced.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk it up too much, but I'm going to be there with my 4 200-inch bucks too, and they've never been displayed at a show before. Actually, they've never been displayed anywhere before because I've just now killed my 4th one. But anyway, then later the next week on February 25th and 26th is the Whitetail Management Conference in Arthur, Illinois, in conjunction with the Real World Wildlife Products Dealer event. And got some fantastic speakers. I'm telling you, this is going to be some cutting-edge information. Anybody that's serious in the land management, if they have a land management business geared towards whitetails, should try to be there. It's for real-world dealers and their guests. So, if you got a local dealer, you can possibly come as their guest, but you can also become a dealer. For more information or to RSVP, call James Hayden at 574-870-7937. And then March 19th, Shelbina Christian Church, I'm going to be giving a seminar there. And I failed to put the phone number on this slide.
I can read it for you, Don, if everybody gets a pen. Shelbina Christian Church, 573-588-2106. I'll read it again, 573-588-2106.
That's the home church of Dr. Aaron Gaines, our partner at Real World, the nutritionist who come up with our Expect Healthy Deer technology, which at the Whitetail Management Conference in Arthur, he's going to be going into the science behind that. And folks, it's a real science. It's not a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. One other couple things about Shipshewana we've talked in past weeks. Make sure you bring your printed out trail camera pictures for entering into that contest. There's huge prizes: Wiseye DC2 no-glow cameras, a $500 gift card to the Osseo booth. Do not show up and have a picture on your phone you wish you could enter. So print that thing out. Joe Johnson and Al Foster are the official judges of that competition. So you not only get to display your trail camera picture for everybody to see, but you'll get to hang out and talk with Al and Joe, tell some hunting stories. They're going to love engaging and interacting with you guys. But I want to just make sure that the folks that are there go to the website or call the Midwest Sportsman's Classic number. This presentation that Don and I are going to be presenting in partnership with is not like anything that we've ever done before. We just did a run through of the presentation before recording today. And folks, you've seen hunting videos, you've seen kind of vlog style videos where we've recorded, say, in the orchard or along a Miscanthus tunnel or something. This presentation is going to go behind the scenes into really seeing our sanctuaries and how we're manipulating habitat to either funnel deer or hold deer in strategic areas where we can hunt them on our farms. And if you want to see what makes these Higgins plans under Chasing Giants Land Consulting's group special, you don't want to miss these seminars. FAE is going to be there to kind of showcase their product. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but the majority of this presentation is going to be how we're hunting our home farms. This isn't something on a permission property or client's property. This is what we've invested into our personal property. So I really hope that you guys will find that seminar and come see it, in addition to all of the other things. The Winsel brothers, Bobby Worthington, Brent Henderson, Jack Houston is going to be there, Lee Mitchell. The speaking guest of this thing is just crazy. So I hope that now that it's not a competition weekend for NWTF in Harrisburg, no excuses. You guys all make the trip up to Shipshewana to visit us. I want to talk, Don, because I have a feeling that we're going to go on a rant. Next week, we're going to make an announcement. This segment of usually where the Higgins rant is actually going to be with a new partner. And we got a story behind that change in a new partnership with Chasing Giants that we'll talk about live at Shipshewana that will be on next week's podcast. But this topic of the National Deer Association, you kind of went on I don't even think it was a typical Higgins rant. You just were very firm in a statement about how this has changed over the years. And then you made a follow-up Facebook post about it, and basically we started getting messages from the community, whether it was comments on social media, we got letters from ex-people affiliated with it. And whenever that happens, you always, is this right? Is it wrong? We don't really have ways to vet out. But when the flood of information comes in from different sources, it just falls in line with the narrative that you talked about last week. So by no means, when we're talking about this, are we in court under oath saying this is what happened. But as people have reached out and shown their frustration with this organization, it falls directly in line with your observations that I think is worth talking about a little bit. So for people who didn't listen to last week's episode, for people who don't have social media, walk us through what the original narrative you brought up with and the frustration you have, and then transition that to some of the things that you heard this week that people brought to light with this topic.
Well, I don't really remember what started my rant last week about NDA. I think it had to do with CWD management and how states are managing CWD.
Right.
And it just so happened that a couple days after we recorded that podcast, I was on social media and I seen a post that a former board member for the Quality Deer Management Association posted. And he went into some detail about how the QDMA rebranded themselves as the National Deer Association. And according to his post, they had turned into pretty much a left-wing radical global warming.
That was his post.
That was his post.
That was what he posted.
His post, all I did was shared his post. Well, so I had a very short commentary when I shared his post, and basically it was, my issue with National Deer Association more than anything is their position with CWD management, and I totally disagree with their position, which, they've supported the sharpshooters and everything else. Well, after I made that post, I started getting messages from multiple people. This wasn't just one person, multiple people. And folks, I don't know if I can't speak for the validity of this, but I've got the email I printed out right here in my hand that I want to read, because according to them, with the National Deer Association, it's pay to play. That's the exact words that were used in not this email, but a different one. It's pay to play with the National Deer Association. So these state agencies can pay the National Deer Association to side with them on different topics. And according
to take a position, not do anything, but just to take a position.
Yeah. And according to this person, who this person has ties back to QDMA and when they shifted to NDA, and he's got some exact figures in here. He says, pertaining to your upcoming podcast, because I mentioned that I was going to talk about this on this podcast. He says, this is quote, Don, pertaining to your upcoming podcast, state agencies pay NDA to support their actions. Missouri Department of Conservation has paid NDA the following. In 2021, $160,000. In 2022, $20,000. In 2023, $120,000. In 2024, $170,000. In 2025, $128,400. Direct cash payments, unquote. So, according to this person who's in the know, who has the exact figures, the Missouri Department of Conservation paid the National Deer Association well over $500,000 to support their position on CWD management. Whether it's true or not, I'll leave that for you to decide, but this person here is convinced, and he's even got the exact figures, and he has the ties back to NDA. So, I personally will not ever support NDA. I think they're way too far left. I think they've got interest, according to the information that's been provided to me, they've got interest in things like global warming, fighting global warming, and they're supporting these states that are taking extreme measures in combating CWD, such as sharpshooters, the elimination of supplemental feeding, or restrictions on supplemental feeding and such. I just think that the deer hunting community really needs to be aware of what the NDA is doing behind the scenes, where they're getting their funding. And my question is, so these states are getting their funding from the federal government for CWD programs. Are they then funneling that back to the NDA to support their position so that they can continue getting these federal funds? Something doesn't smell right here, folks. And if you're supporting the NDA, I think they've got some questions they need to answer. Personally, I will never support them. I don't care what their next social media post is. I don't follow them on social media. Just so much of the stuff they post is just totally, 180 degrees from what I believe, that I don't even think they represent deer hunting anymore.
Well, I'm going to make the controversy even bigger, because as I've managed a smaller nonprofit foundation called Lester's Feet for almost 4 years, I guess 5 years now, you start seeing how people could abuse that as basically a tax shelter. So that's why in the bylaws of Lester's Feet, it clearly states that no one will ever receive compensation for volunteering or working with this foundation. It is 100% volunteer. But most of the time, that's not how nonprofits work. And the National Deer Association is actually 501c3, or they fill out what's called an IRS Form 990, which means that they're nonprofit. So if you think that organizations like this, like the National Deer Association, that's taking money from these state agencies, have your best interest, request to see their donor list. Because when you look at who else is driving the narrative of these liberal organizations that are a nonprofit, guess what? The insurance agencies are probably paying a lot of money. The Farm Bureau is probably paying a lot of money, to where you have all of these other factors coming in that is not necessarily aligned with what you want to do. And the QDMA used to be known as like the Yeti cooler of the deer hunting. And I'm a member of QDMA, or I have a Yeti cooler. It's the cool thing to do. I'm into habitat and the betterment of it. Folks, these organizations have gotten twisted and turned for one thing, and that's politics and money, and what drives that money. And when these nonprofit organizations take these funds from not only state agencies, but you better believe that political lobbyists are orchestrating huge companies to also donate to this nonprofit to script the narrative to appease agendas. If you don't think that's how politics really works, you got the pillowcase over your face. So if you really think that you want to be aligned with organizations like this, there's one way to truly vet it out, is before you partner, become a member, or make a donation, ask who their donor list is, because that's who's going to drive the narrative of what these people stand for. And I'm guessing you're going to be really surprised after hearing those numbers that Don just said.
Yeah, and again, this is just something that's been shared with me. You got to make your own mind up. It'd be nice if the NDA would come out and make a statement, clear the air. But I think there's too many people who were formerly affiliated, because like I said, I got correspondence from multiple people that were formerly affiliated with QDMA, and they were there in that transition. And I guess it wasn't a smooth transition. There were people that were fighting that transition to NDA, because the QDMA was a good organization. There was things they did I did not fully agree with, but I still support them. I've met Lindsey Thomas and Kip Adams, and they were both very kind to me, very courteous and generous. Lindsey allowed me to write for Quality Whitetails back in the day, but I think the whole organization, it sounds to me like anyway, has just totally gone off the rails on some liberal agenda that does not benefit the whitetail or whitetail deer hunters in any way.
Yeah. So I know what I was saying about the nonprofit and asking folks, it might sound like I'm picking on the NDA. I probably am, if I'm being honest, but that's how you vet out any nonprofit. So I've learned this lesson and seen the behind the scenes on the legal aspect of running a nonprofit. Before you donate, make sure you understand what the bylaws of that organizations are. I think with like the American Red Cross, the National Cancer Society, Hunter or Wounded Warriors, all of those type of organizations, before just hearing or seeing social media about what they be, before you put your money in their hands, vet it out. Figure out who really supports that organization, how they use their money, how they pay their. And trust me, I don't expect every nonprofit to work like Lester's Feet, where we are 100% volunteer. People have to, work and run the organization when you get so big. But that's the way you vet out where you put your effort, your time, and your money when it comes to nonprofits. So that's just advice for you everywhere, not specific to this deal with the NDA. I agree with you. I'd rather see them come out and make a hard line statement and go on the record. Let's see where these people stand. I think that would be eye-opening for a lot of people.
I think they need an official position on CWD management so that anyone who considers supporting them knows where they stand on that issue. And I think they need to respond to the whole global warming issue that they've been accused of catering to.
Yep. Wonder what sided party that aligns with.
Yeah. It's not the conservative Midwest deer hunter, I can tell you that.
Yeah. All right, let's transition to the 360 blind Higgins hot seat question, and I'm going to change it up this week, Don, and let's not make it about any political issue or anything. I want you to think back over your hunting history and come up with maybe one or two examples of where you've hunted off of your home farm. So this is not where you've hunted on your home farm where you walk out the door, get on your quiet cat bike and zoom around the section and come in from an open ag field. That you've hunted public permission properties where you have tried to be under the radar, disguise yourself, take a different pathway or technique to get into your hunting stand so that people did not know that Don Higgins was hunting there. I'm looking for some creative things that you've done in the past to go incognito during hunting season on permission or public properties.
Man, if I give away all these secrets, then people are going to know what to look for. Well, I'll say one thing I've done is I've parked my truck at places make people think I'm hunting there that I'm not hunting there at all. Had left my truck someplace in the dark before daylight and had my wife or somebody pick me up and take me to where I'm really hunting. I've done some things that I just don't want to share because I'm still doing it. I don't want people to be looking out, but I'll tell you what. I shared a story not too long ago in the last few weeks about a situation where I was hunting on public land and a person got my picture on a cell camera there and became so upset that he did all kinds of things like steal my tree stand and make false allegations to the local conservation officer. It's been a kind of a tough pill for me to swallow to think that, because I don't think I'm better than anyone else. I still see myself as just that country kid, scraping by to make a living and spending all my free time in the woods. And I don't think I'm better than anybody. So it just kind of blows my mind that I've got to do things like this just to be able to go deer hunting. But I'll share one other thing that I've done. So there's some pieces of public land where you have to sign in. And I'll tell you something else. These places that you got to apply to hunt on public, these limited draw areas, I never get drawn for them. I think whenever my name comes through on an application, I think they throw it in the trash. I really do. I don't think they want to deal with me. I think they just throw that in the trash because I never, ever, ever get drawn to hunt one of these special hunts on public land. But some of these places that you hunt on public, you got to sign in. There's at the parking area, there's a little sign-in thing where you got to sign in so they know who's out in the woods at that time. And then when you come back, you got to sign out. So they know that this person has been here, but they're gone. I'm not sure 100% why, but whenever I hunt places like that, let's just say it's going to be very difficult for anyone to read that signature. If they can look at those scribbles and come up with the name Don Higgins, it's going to be an absolute miracle.
That's great. Yeah, just make that official signature a little squirrely. Your fingers were cold. You couldn't hold the pen real tight, right?
Yeah. Well, I hurt my hand the other day, so I'm writing left-handed.
That's good stuff. All right. Well, we hope that topics like this is something you'll be coming by the Midwest Sportsman's Classic booth. We're again all $4. We're going to have a booth there. Don, you and I are releasing a new product that has Chasing Giants logo branding on it. We're going to be selling that at Shipshawana. That announcement will come on next week's show. And for those listening that's not going to be there, and we have just some big news all around. We're really excited about next week. But as always, the segment of this brought to us by Midwest Land Group. We come to you with questions that our listeners want to talk about. This week you picked out 5 questions. Every week I get a message every week that says, how do I submit questions onto the podcast? So please go to chasinggiants.com and you will see a form. Scroll to the bottom of the page, fill all of that out. Don and I will take those questions, talk about them on air. If your question is selected, about once every 2 months or so, we give all of the people whose question was picked to a vendor and they ship you a sponsor shirt. It takes a little while to get to you people, so I know a lot of you all send us messages, where's my free t-shirt? We batch run these things. We don't do them every week and ship them out every week because I'm sure you can understand there's a lot of cost to this. So it's a free t-shirt, folks. So just be patient.
I'm going to go on my mini rant right now. So,
here we go on a free t-shirt.
On a free t-shirt. If you fill out the form properly, you will get a free t-shirt. If you do not fill out the form properly, do not send me an email later. I don't have time to deal with it. I'm sorry, but I just don't. And I see it all the time that somebody will submit their question and they'll put, when it says name, they'll put their first name. Then when it says address, they put their last. We don't have the address to send it. If you fill that form out properly, you will get a t-shirt. If you don't, try again next time. We'll send you one the next time, but don't reach out to it because you didn't get a t-shirt, because it's probably because you didn't fill the form out right.
Be patient. They'll come. I promise you. We batch run these, but yeah, it's getting a little overwhelming, but we're trying to still, we spend a lot of money on this. I mean, this is not a cheap thing that we do as a thank you for people engaging in it. So chasinggiants.com, fill the information out correctly. All of your information. We don't sell it. We don't even keep it. I can't even tell you. We don't even, when I share the screen on here with the question, I take the address off, and once the shirt's been ordered, that doesn't get stored anywhere else, promise you. So anyway, let's take a quick break from Midwest Land Group, come back with our first listener-submitted questions in just a second.
Ever had a terrible real estate experience? Average realtors usually spend more time selling themselves than on selling your land. They'll tell you anything to get the listing. They know that if they get the listing, you're stuck with them. Not here. Midwest Land Group has changed the way land is sold and is the only brokerage to offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee. That means if we don't meet your expectations, you can fire us. That puts all the pressure on us to perform. We don't just list land, we sell it. If you're looking to buy or sell property, don't before you talk to us. Visit us at MidwestLandGroup.com.
All right, our first question comes from Justin Green from Linden, Michigan. It says, when should we be entering and exiting tree stands? I'm seeing more and more videos that going in before daylight and exiting at dark may be hurting the hunt more than helping, with deer being able to see so well at night. What are your thoughts? Thanks. Justin, first of all, it doesn't matter what position you take on what subject, there's going to be a video that's going to support your position. And there's also more than one way to go about doing things. I know Roger Rothar back in the day, he used to promote waiting until first light to slip into a stand, so he could see deer and supposedly bump fewer deer. I've always been a guy that I want to be in my stand at first shooting light, and I want to get there a minimum of 15 minutes before I can shoot, so that the area has a little bit of time to calm down around my stand if I do happen to bump something. I've bumped enough deer in the night that I don't believe bumping a deer can totally ruin your hunt. I think those deer encounter so much, with coyotes and other predators and whatever. A deer blowing and running, the other deer don't have any idea what did that. They don't know if it's a dog or a coyote or what. I think they calm down very quickly. I would much rather be there in my stand when first shooting light happens and get there 15 minutes, or even sometimes a half hour early and sit there in the dark and let things calm down. In my opinion, that's just a better approach, but you could wait till first light like Roger used to do and be very successful. So I don't think it's that critical, but I'm just telling you what I prefer.
I want to just make a clarification comment here, Don, and have you elaborate, because people take us so literal and like it's a black and white doctrine gospel from the New Testament when you say something. When you're saying 15 minutes before daylight, you are hunting the edges. If for some reason you were going into that public area where that guy gave you so much fit, I'm guessing that you would get there a little bit earlier than 15 minutes early. So just make a clarification comment here about where you're saying 15 minutes is the type of hunting you would say be doing when you're home farm where you're hunting just the edge.
Yeah, that's a great point. On public land, when I'm going deeper in, or any place I'm really going deeper into the timber, I'm probably looking more like 30 minutes before shooting light. And the reason for it is when I go into most of my stands on the edges, I'm not using a light of any kind. It's moonlight only. And if I got to go into the timber, obviously you got to use some kind of light, which probably causes a little more disturbance. I don't know that for sure. But if I'm going deeper into the timber on public land where there's going to be other hunters, I'm typically using a light and getting there a little bit earlier.
All right. Sounds good. Just wanted to clarify that. People take us pretty literally.
Right. Okay, the next one comes from Blake Marcus from Germantown, Illinois. Don, when you burn your switchgrass fields, how do you go about getting a burn plan or burn permit that the state of Illinois requires for a prescribed burn? I know you mentioned in the past that you and your wife just burn them, but I don't know if you actually go through the hoops to do it the way the state requires. My family and I would love to do some burns on our farms, but don't have the qualifications. Come back to that one. We also don't want to fork out the money to have other people that are qualified do it for us. I hope I don't get you riled up about the state of Illinois by asking this question, even though the state makes easy things very hard, like managing game populations. I was just curious about how you go about the whole process of prescribed burns. Thanks for the awesome content, guys, and thanks for sharing Jesus on your platforms. As far as my qualifications is I have gasoline and a match. That's all I need. Folks, you know why this government has gotten so out of control? Is because too many people follow the government stupidity regulations, like their life depends on it. And I'm not one of them guys. I'm a country boy. I treat people right. I try to do my neighbors right. I help people when I can. And I've got common sense. And I tell people all the time, laws are for people with no common sense. See this guy right here? He's got common sense. He doesn't care about burn permits. Now, my common sense tells me that before I light that fire, I should call my local fire department and give them a heads up, which I do. And I tell them, if you receive a call that there's a fire at such and such location, do not come to that fire unless that call is coming from me. If there is a problem, I will personally be the one calling because I've got my cell phone in my pocket. And that's where common sense overrides liberal stupidity. And Germantown, Illinois, if I remember right, I'm not sure 100% where Germantown is, but that's south of me. You're in God's country. You're not in Chicago. You're not living in a suburb. All you need is a match and some common sense, and then go make a burn.
You can always have an accidental spark on some dry grass that just takes off on you and, accidentally light your switchgrass field on fire.
It just amazes me, the people that I talk to that are afraid to burn something. I mean, I hear it from consulting clients, and I get it. In some areas, I definitely get it. If you're in a heavily timbered area where, one thing goes wrong and half the county burns up, well, I understand that, but we're out here in farm country. I'm telling you, every one of my neighbors that are farmers, they are burning their grass waterways in the spring. They're burning the road ditches. It helps control weeds and briars and saplings and stuff where these grasses are growing and these grasses are stopping erosion. It goes back to what we was talking about earlier, why you don't burn a pasture that you're turning into deer habitat, because the fire kills all those things that you're trying to establish for the deer. Why anyone would listen to to someone to tell you what to do on your own land is beyond me.
Well, and I think as you kind of alluded to earlier, there's certain areas that, I mean, we've lit some pretty big fields in Miscanthus Rose on fire and shot flames like a butane torch, 50, 60 feet up in the air to where you can see it from miles. But there's also some areas in hill country that you end up, you have a consistent wind when your land's a pancake, that you get in hill country and these winds swirl and you can't control it going down through these hollers and stuff. I do think people need to take some precautions, but in certain areas like you, just talk to your fire chief, man. Forget all of the stuff, the rigmarole through it. Talk to your fire chief. I'm sure that you can find something without having to go through the crazy permits. Understanding fire breaks. We plant, when Don and I both prescribe a TSI switchgrass area, not a TSI, but a switchgrass area, there's always built in a fire break where we'll put in a clover plot or a green food source for the deer. That way we can back burn and keep it away from timber. So, setting it up, yeah, but torch the thing.
If you remember nothing else from this question, remember this. Laws are for people with no common sense. God gave me common sense. I'm not going to do anything to cause harm to another person. I'm not going to do anything to cause another person any sort of financial hardship or any cost. Just treat others the way you want to be treated. We got way too many laws. Terry's just sitting there saying, would you shut up and get on to the next one?
Nah, man, have at it.
Our next one comes from Jerry Michaels from Buxton, Minnesota. He says, hey guys, I love the podcast and also all of your social media stuff. I read and watch anything I can about whitetails on the internet, from the biggest names in the industry to the people trying to get started. My question is about your influence in the hunting world. I don't think anyone has a bigger influence than you do. I notice that whenever you guys discuss a topic, within a day or so, a lot of other people are talking about the same thing. It is way too often to just be coincidence. People are literally watching what you guys say and then running with whatever the topic is. Some people are putting their own spin on it. Some are just copying you almost word for word without giving you any credit. And some just want to disagree with everything you say. Have you noticed this? And if so, how do you feel about it? Well, Jerry, I've noticed it because on almost a daily basis, somebody is sending me a screenshot of someone else's post or video talking about something that Terry and I just talked about on the recent Chasing Giants podcast. And if you want to test this theory, let's just see how many people start talking about the National Deer Association now. It wasn't a topic at all before, I guess, last week's mini rant. But now that we've really called it out, let's just see how many people start talking about it. And, I don't care. I guess I consider it an honor that people think enough of us that they repeat things. I do. One thing that I try to do, and I wish more people would do this, is give credit to people when they teach you something. For example, I just talked about Roger Rothar waiting until first light to go into his stands. When somebody, you've heard me mention Al Foster's name countless times on this podcast, or Gene Wenzel. These guys taught me a lot back when I was younger, and I don't forget that. I don't want to take credit for something that they taught me. Yeah, sometimes I may put my own little spin on it. Let's take rope scrapes, for example. A lot of people try to give me credit for rope scrapes because, I I guess I maybe took it to the next level and exposed it to more people. But that was something that the Wenzels came up with actually years before I started implementing it. I just wish some of these people would give credit where it's due. And, I try to do that. And I just wish some of this younger crowd would, instead of trying to be an instant expert by sharing something they learned from someone, yeah, go ahead and share it, but just give a little bit of credit to the person you learned it from. Yeah, as far as the people that are always looking to disagree, yeah, there's people out there trying to make a name for themselves. Just this week alone, I had 3 different things sent to me from friends, and all 3 things they sent me were from people trying to be a whitetail consultant. All 3 people were disagreeing with me without calling me by name, but it was very obvious who they were talking about. And they're trying to build, I guess, their brand by bashing me. And if that's what they got to do, more power to them. Terry and I are extremely blessed. our blessings just seem to be getting bigger instead of smaller. And this is America. I chased my dream when I was younger, and still am today. And I'd fully encourage anyone else to be chasing their dream as well. And I guess I'm just going to have to wear it as a badge of honor that people want to watch us for ideas for their content.
So how many people are going to talk about Separatech underwear next week? That's the trigger word. Let's flood the hunting community with Separatech underwear. I'm telling you guys, it's still life-changing. Life-changing, I tell you, life-changing.
Well, I think they'd be listening to the wrong podcast if they're talking about the underwear. This next question comes from my buddy Jimbo Maupin from Oliver Springs, Tennessee. He says, thanks for the great podcast. I have an observation and a question for you guys. I was just curious if you guys have seen the coon population in your hunting areas explode in the last 5 to 6 years. I honestly think maybe we have condemned the wrong animal for crop damage. On properties that have both corn and beans, it's very rare to see deer damage to the beans since 2012. However, the corn damage is absurd. This past season, I watched 35 coons invade a cornfield the second week of October. I don't have the deer numbers or pictures of deer to point the finger at the deer. I have thousands of pictures of coons. This scenario is played out across 3 counties. In 2023, the state of Iowa made it legal to hunt coons year-round because of what I previously stated. Do you think Illinois should do the same? Thank you for sacrificing your time to produce this podcast. God is good always. Jimbo, I'm 100% in agreement with you. Illinois should make coon season year-round just like they do coyotes. I do think coons do way more damage to corn than they do beans. I'm not sure if they bother beans at all, but they can sure decimate a cornfield, and the deer do get the blame for it most of the time. So I think you got a great idea. Maybe that's something that I need to present to Darren Bailey when we have him on the podcast, but hopefully they will enact that, because the coons do a lot of damage that deer get blamed for.
We're still not letting dogs run across our farm, though.
No, absolutely not.
If this is a plot from the coon hunters in the room to stand up and say, let us start coon hunting on our properties, that is not what we're supporting, though.
No dogs.
No dogs. All right, last one. Let's get this one through, and we'll close out the show.
This one comes from Nick Booley from Hannibal, New York. It says, Dear Don and Terry, been listening to the podcast since episode 1 and never missed an episode. Thanks for all the good info. My question is, when you talk about bucks traveling on the downwind side of bedding, do you think they still stay in cover but on the downwind side of the thicket, or do you think they travel maybe a field edge on the downwind side, just trying to sharpen up some tactics? Thanks for all you guys do. God bless. Well, Nick, I used to do a seminar where I showed a video clip taken from a tree stand on the downwind edge of a bedding thicket. And it's a series of video clips that were all filmed the very same morning. And all these bucks were doing the same thing. They were all running the downwind edge of cover. There were 7 bucks in total I seen that morning and videoed. And some of those were right on the outside of the cover, right on the field edge, and some were just barely in the cover. So they do both. My experience has been that if there's a little bit of hunting pressure, the mature bucks will stay in that cover a little bit. They don't like to be exposed out on that edge. If it's a farm, managed farm where there's very little human intrusion and the buck feels comfortable, a lot of times he will be on that field edge side, but he's close where typically he can jump right in. Now, I remember a situation, it's probably been 15, 20 years ago now. It was after I'd learned to hunt the downwind edge. So I was hunting a heavy hedgerow or tree line that deer like to travel. And one thing I learned there was that the deer, it didn't matter what was on one side of the field or the other. You could have standing corn on one side and a plowed field on the other. And a mature buck was always going to run that downwind side. He would rather be in that plowed corn or that plowed dirt than in the standing corn because it gave him the wind. He could scent check everything. He could scent check that cornfield and the tree line by being out in that cover. And what happened to me one time was there was a buck that I was targeting, and instead of walking along the downwind edge tight to the tree line, this buck had learned to be out in the field about 40 yards because apparently I don't know if I educated him or what, but he learned to stay out in that field far enough that my scent was no longer blowing over the top of his back. It was blowing right at him. He caught me on that hunt. But they get onto you in a hurry, and they know what to do. And they know that if I stay out in this field just a little bit farther, that scent's not going over my back any longer. And so to answer your question, that's a long-winded way of answering your question, which is they will do both. But the more hunting pressure and the older the buck, the more likely he is to stay within the cover.
Yeah, and I think the people that come to our seminar in Shipshewana for that FAE head, that's exactly some of the things we're trying to amplify with that project on your farm, is providing that area that they can scent check, on the edge. That would be a great application to take a lane to where you can easily shoot into, but funnel those deer in a specific area close within bow range of your tree stand. So I think people are going to really enjoy the visual aspect of being able to see what we're doing on that project. So, all right, well, we got a busy week ahead of us. A lot of big announcements on next week's show. Next week's show will be recorded and filmed live in front of a big audience in Shipshewana. It'll still air the exact same time. I'm not sure at this point whether it will be video or audio only. We'll have to see what we got resource-wise when we get to the show this week. But I'm looking forward to chatting with everybody. Make sure you stop by the Chasing Giants booth, and we will have some fundraising activities for Lester's Feet while we're there. Big news, so make sure you come there and ask, and we'll talk to you about fundraising opportunities for the foundation. 100% of that money will go back to families with sick kids or families that are navigating breast cancer. In addition, this is something new we really haven't done much of. I am sitting here looking at boxes and boxes of giveaways for us to pass out during our events from our sponsors. So Matthews, I got a big box of swag from Matthews. I got stuff from Wiseye, Novix, all kinds of stuff from all of our sponsors that throughout our events, we're going to be throwing stuff out into the crowd. So make sure you come by and see us. Check us out for all of our seminar content. And I look forward to seeing everybody in person next week.
Yeah, it's going to be a great week. So it doesn't matter which day you're at the Midwest Sportsman's Classic. We'll be there all 3 days. We'll be on stage all 3 days. So hope to see you there. Have safe travels. God bless. Have a great week.
Take care.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.